As Professor Whitmore announced that the problem was unsolvable, silence swept across the lecture hall. Down scenes of bright minds, candidates and tech prodigies alike looked on in shocked agreement as cameras captured the moment for a live stream. Suddenly, from the back row came a soft voice saying, "Excuse me, I think I know how." Every head turned to see a 9-year-old boy raising his hand timidly while barely reaching over his desk. What followed would leave Harvard astonished and shock waves around the globe. Before we get started, make sure to like this video and let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Your support enables us to continue sharing impactful stories. Now, let's dive in. The room was filled with some of the brightest minds across the nation. The walls of Harvard's Grand Lecture Hall reverberated with excitement as students, faculty members, and guest scholars eagerly awaited Professor Nathaniel Whitmore's presentation. Renowned globally for addressing problems deemed unsolvable by others, he was set to tackle an age-old equation that had stumped mathematicians for decades. Harvard had advertised it as a historic occasion, live streaming to thousands of online viewers. Cameras were omnipresent. Every seat was occupied. The tension in the air could have easily halted a heartbeat. Professor Whitmore approached the board, adjusted his glasses, and scanned the room with an unmistakable confident smirk. He cleared his throat and inscribed an intricate series of symbols on the board behind him. Before turning back to face everyone, his voice resonated clearly and purposefully throughout the room. This problem has remained unsolved for more than a century. Today, I will demonstrate why it is insurmountable. The audience leaned in closer as students exchanged glances, their notebooks open and pens poised to take notes. Whitmore proceeded methodically through the intricacies of the issue, identifying patterns, pinpointing contradictions, delivering proofs. Each step was not only logical, but also almost poetic in its clarity. 10 minutes into his presentation, most attendees were nodding along, with understanding and admiration at his reasoning skills. 20 minutes later came the striking conclusion. It hit like a hammer blow. Mathematically speaking, this problem cannot be solved. No solution exists now or ever will. After a moment of silence, light applause filled the room. In the very back row Saturday, a small figure, 9-year-old Jacob Milner. His feet dangled above the floor as he perched upright in his oversized blue hoodie and cradled a half-empty juice box. With wide, curious eyes fixed on the board, something just didn't feel right to him. Unable to find a sitter that day, his mother had brought him along, eager for intellectual exploration. Even at such an age, known for reading college textbooks merely out of interest, Jacob had pleaded with her to let him stay. Unaware that her son was on the verge of transforming everything, she watched as Jacob studied the equation once more, before tentatively raising his hand. Initially unnoticed, it wasn't until Professor Whitmore turned and spotted the small hand confidently lifted at the back of the hall that a ripple of bewilderment spread through those present. A few students chuckled softly. Meanwhile, a professor seated near the front knitted his brows in curiosity. The camera focused in tightly on him. "Yes?" Whitmore asked with an amused smile playing across his lips. "Do you have a question for us, young man?" Jacob rose to his feet, speaking with a voice that was both gentle and assured. "I believe there is an answer," he began. "I've noticed a pattern you might have overlooked." The entire room fell silent as every gaze fixed on the 9-year-old boy at the back of Harvard's Grand Lecture Hall. In that instant, the imposing walls seemed to shrink around them, containing what felt like all of existence in one shared moment. The silence hung heavily in the air, while camera operators strained their lenses closer, hardly able to process what they were witnessing. Professor Whitmore's smirk faded into something more serious and strategic. Not a single person dared break the quiet. Jacob Milner moved ahead, holding a spiral notebook laden with hand-drawn numbers and shapes. Though his fingers shook slightly, his gaze remained fixed on the board. His voice was calm and clear, as he shattered the silence like glass breaking across marble floors. "I think you overlooked the symmetry between the prime clusters," Jacob pointed out. "It loops, it doesn't stop where you concluded." A woman in the third row let out a quiet gasp, while Professor Whitmore raised an eyebrow but stayed silent. With his arms crossed and an unreadable expression, Jacob strode down the aisle past rows of adults, who whispered and stared as if they were seeing a ghost. When he arrived at the front, the professor gestured toward him. "Well, I suppose we should hear what he has to say. Let the boy speak." Jacob ascended onto a short wooden step near the board, a platform meant for shorter lectures by visiting experts from decades ago but now hosting a fourth grader instead. He opened his notebook and started transcribing his numbers onto the lower section of the chalkboard beside Whitmore's calculations. Despite its unsteadiness, his handwriting was precise. "I reviewed this in the car yesterday," Jacob stated calmly, without a hint of hesitation in his voice. "Do you notice this loop here?" He enclosed a portion that Whitmore had overlooked with a circle. "It repeats every 293 digits. You stopped at this point." He indicated on the chalkboard. "What if you'd gone just further? You would have spotted it." He drew swiftly as his marker screeched against the surface noisily. An undeniable pattern surfaced, a mirrored sequence that had been obscured within the complexity. An audible gasp swept through the auditorium like wildfire. A mathematics professor from MIT, who had traveled specifically to witness this event, leaned forward and whispered in disbelief. "That cannot be right." Yet it was true. Whitmore's formula combined with Jacob's extension formed a loop, not an end or contradiction but a continuation. The boy turned around nervously yet excitedly. "It doesn't conclude, it evolves, and here is where the values reappear. They simply exchange positions." Whitmore's mouth opened, yet no words emerged. The logic was irrefutable. He glanced once more at the board, blinking in disbelief, before turning toward Jacob, then expression of strange calmness, part awe and part incredulity in his eyes. The audience had moved from amused skepticism to utter silence. Not a cough or whisper could be heard as reality seemed to collapse inward on itself when a child subverted what generations of experts held as truth. Then came the standing ovation, but it wasn't unanimous. In a remote corner of the room, a man wearing a black coat stepped out from the shadows. He wore a Harvard staff badge, yet remained unrecognized by anyone. His gaze was fixed on Jacob, not with curiosity, but something keener and more chilling, as if he'd seen this before, as though this boy wasn't just a prodigy, but also posed a threat. When the applause began to die down, Daniels' Jacob's mother finally exhaled. Her hand shook in her lap, amidst an internal storm of pride and fear mixed with disbelief. She had always known her son was unique. Now the world knew it too. The crowd pressed forward, swarming the stage. Reporters raised their cameras while students thrust out phones. Professors exchanged whispers and glances of astonished respect. Amidst the clamor, Jacob's eyes found a man standing still in the corner, observing everything without stirring. Daniels felt an instinctive tug and maneuvered through the throng towards Jacob just as this enigmatic figure clad in black began to approach them with an unsettling presence. He moved with a calm and deliberate stride, yet his eyes remained unblinking. "Jacob," she murmured softly, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. "We must leave." Professor Whitmore, still in shock, turned to her. Madam, hold on. Your son is extraordinary. I need to know who taught him this skill. She responded simply. No one does always see numbers differently. Whitmore paused thoughtfully, before asking again if he had been tested for these abilities. But Daniels's was interrupted by another voice behind her. A man wearing a black coat declared it might indeed be time for such an evaluation of Jacob's talents. His badge displayed Federal Science Intelligence Division, accompanied by a logo unfamiliar to both Daniels's and Whitmore. Holding up a leather document folder, his gaze locked on Jacob as he introduced himself. My name is Agent Warren, he continued. This young man's demonstration has triggered a Level 7 anomaly flag. I need to speak with him privately. Daniels's face turned pale as she questioned. Anomaly flag? What does that even mean? Maintaining an unchanging expression, Agent Warren replied. It means your son just solved something we have been monitoring for 32 years. The sequence he finished isn't merely mathematical. It's a blueprint for an encrypted energy signal. Whitmore was taken aback. Energy signal? What do you mean? Not here, Warren cautioned, glancing around the room discreetly, as security guards arrived at his silent request to disperse the crowd and shut off cameras, prompting protests from professors, until Warren revealed another badge crafted in gold that brought everything to a halt. I need to speak with the boy. Daniels stood protectively before Jacob. You're not taking him anywhere. Despite her defiance, Warren's tone stayed composed. If what he just did falls into the wrong hands, it's not only equations that could be compromised. Whole systems are at stake, everything from infrastructure to communication and security. Jacob glanced up at his mother, with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. Wow, I just solved a math problem, he said. Why does it feel like they're treating me as if I've hacked the government? Before Daniels could reply, another voice resonated from the back of the auditorium. Because you have. An older man entered then, gray-haired and wearing a long blue coat trimmed with silver. The crowd parted for him as Warren's jaw tightened in response. Jacob whispered, Who is that? Agent Warren's expression darkened. That's why I wanted us to depart quietly. The man in the blue coat approached Jacob directly and knelt beside him. He smiled warmly, with eyes both kind and intense. Softly he spoke. Jacob Miller, we've been waiting for someone like you for decades. Come with me. I'll reveal the truth behind the numbers. Daniels stood frowning as Jacob put a question that would change everything. What truth? The man wearing the blue coat paused before responding. He scrutinized Jacob's face, his gaze so piercing that it seemed to resonate through Jacob's very being. The atmosphere in the auditorium transformed, humming with a charged tension akin to electricity. Silence enveloped the crowd, as every professor and student turned their attention towards Jacob, eagerly anticipating an event of significance. Despite this newfound focus on him, Jacob felt anything but special. He had always been that quiet nerd engrossed in solving equations and pondering theories that others dismissed or ignored. He had always viewed numbers differently from others, though he considered it a gift. Now, here he was, face to face with an older man who possessed knowledge beyond his own. The man's voice was gentle yet authoritative as he finally spoke. What you accomplished up there wasn't just solving a typical math problem. You've unlocked the key to a sequence of events that has been playing out for centuries and that no one fully understood until now. Jacob felt his heart race at these words. What do you mean? I just solved a math puzzle. Sure, it was challenging but not overly intense. The man gave a slight smile. That's what most people think, Jacob, but you're different. It's more than numbers. For you're uncovering something much larger. Daniels advanced protectively with determination in her gaze. I don't understand, she said firmly. What exactly are you implying about my son? Agent Warren had been quiet until then and softly cleared his throat before speaking in an unnervingly calm voice. Mrs. Milner, your son has accomplished something extraordinary for being in mere mathematics. He uncovered an ancient code that had been hidden in plain view for centuries, a discovery coveted by governments, institutions, and corporations alike. Jacob was bewildered. It seemed impossible and absurd to him that his casual problem-solving efforts involved puzzles deemed unsolvable until now. Everything he thought he understood about his own skills was rapidly coming undone before him. So, what happens next? Jacob asked in a hushed tone, barely audible. The man clad in the blue coat leaned forward, locking eyes with Jacob. Now, Jacob, he said calmly, you're about to go somewhere that will reveal just how deep this rabbit hole truly extends. The sequence you unlocked is merely the start of an unfolding series of events, poised to transform everything you understand, our world and ours. Daniels seized Jacob's arm urgently. Number, she pleaded. I don't want any involvement in this matter, whatever it entails. Count me out. Unmoved by her words or actions, the man remained steadfast and unaffected. He had encountered this kind of resistance countless times before. Mrs. Milner, he said, his tone both firm and empathetic. I understand your desire to protect your son, but the situation is bigger than either of us alone can handle. The world stood at a critical juncture, with Jacob possessing the unique power needed to influence its direction. Was the only one capable of unveiling secrets hidden for centuries. Jacob's mind was racing as thoughts clashed within it. How should he proceed with such monumental information? What exactly was unfolding around him? Most importantly, could he really place his trust in these strangers, who seemingly knew more about him than even himself? The elderly man stepped back, signaling for Agent Warren to proceed. It's time, Jacob, he said. You must make a decision now, a choice that will determine everything. Jacob glanced at his mother, searching her expression for guidance but finding only fear and love. The same mix of emotions every mother experiences when confronting the unknown. Daniels couldn't shield him from this moment. No one could. I don't know what to do, Jacob admitted, his voice trembling slightly as the man in the blue coat gently placed a hand on his shoulder. You may not grasp everything at this moment, but soon you will, and when that time comes, Jacob, you'll possess the power to alter your world entirely. Jacob swallowed hard. It was no longer a matter of choice, but rather an inevitable decision, pulling him into uncharted territory, for which he felt ill-prepared. Yet deep down in his heart, he realized turning away wasn't viable anymore in it now. With a slow nod of resignation and resolve combined, he agreed reluctantly. Okay, came the quiet capitulation, as acceptance washed over him like cold rain and necessary discomfort. Unsoaked skin signaling growth, being fears constrained while opportunity beckoned from shadows known toward amorphous horizons waiting eagerly just outside. I'll go with you. The older man watched understanding dawn within those young eyes, finally seeing purpose where uncertainty had reigned supreme mere moments ago, before softening theirs once more whilst urgency prodded action onward without delay past lingering doubt's realm, left fast retreat behind them altogether, echoes fading amid new beginnings. Bold steps welcomed amidst burgeoning discovery, inviting pursuit and sanctioned by limitation alone ahead. Backlit refused dismissive danger, depravity. Winning smiles held an equal measure. Timeless knowing anticipation gestured forward silently conveying continuity, renewed unfamiliarity emerged safe nurtured tenderly fashioned belief. Born instinct shared a new adventuring, nevertheless embraced firmly, albeit tenuously charging ever upward unseen trajectory. Ultimate quest. Befits sacrifice requisite aspiration awaiting enveloped light twilight burnishing dawning illumination eternally trusted guide wise follow inevitably trace destined footprints leading savior lead wondrous unexpected extraordinary call live. As they departed, Daniels stood by helplessly, a tear rolling down her cheek. Her son was entering a realm of secrets beyond her control. Jacob's heart raced as he trailed the man in the blue coat, and Agent Warren through the elongated hallway dimly lit around them. With each step, an increasing weight seemed to bear down on him, burden of what lay ahead unmistakable. What had ensnared him now? The man's words about hidden truths, ancient codes, and unfathomable powers echoed hauntingly in his mind. He had just begun to grasp the magnitude of the situation. The air around him seemed denser with each second, vibrating with a quiet technological hum, and hinting at something monumental looming ahead. He glanced back at Agent Warren, who followed closely behind, his expression inscrutable. Was he an ally, or was he involved in something larger than Jacob could fathom? They arrived at an unremarkable door at the end of the hallway when suddenly, the man in the blue coat stopped and turned to face Jacob. "What you're about to witness will alter everything," he said, his voice calm and deliberate. "Are you prepared for this?" Jacob nodded, though his stomach churned with unease. He was unsure of what lay ahead, but deep down he knew there was no returning from where he'd ventured a world steeped in ancient codes, secrets, and concealed powers. The man swung the door open wide, as Jacob entered a space that resembled nothing short of a high-tech command center, screens flashing lines of code, alongside graphs and digital maps spanning the globe. Unfamiliar symbols and numbers flashed quickly across the screens, forming a restless tapestry of intrigue. At the heart of the room was an expansive table, covered with detailed blueprints that depicted something far beyond Jacob's understanding. "We've been observing this for years," said the man in the blue coat as he gestured toward the table. "Your solution is crucial to comprehending how everything interlocks. Every puzzle piece is assembled here." Jacob's eyes flickered to the monitors, where data and information inundated him like a tidal wave. The sheer volume was overwhelming, leaving his mind spinning in confusion. Yet amidst the chaos, one undeniable truth emerged. This discovery was monumental. Agent Warren moved closer with an air of compelled urgency in his voice. "Jacob," he began cautiously, "you can't begin to fathom what you've just uncovered. That sequence isn't merely mathematical. It's a gateway to something infinitely more dangerous and powerful." A shiver coursed through Jacob as he grasped the gravity of Warren's words. There were those who would stop at nothing to seize control over it. Dangerous, indeed, powerful. What had he done to warrant such a description? The man in the blue coat picked up on Jacob's growing panic and spoke calmly. "We are not your enemies, Jacob. It's crucial for you to understand that this knowledge, this ability is highly sought after." He paused before continuing with urgency. "There are both visible and hidden forces that have been searching relentlessly for it over the years." Jacob swallowed hard and asked anxiously, "Who exactly are these people?" His voice betrayed his fear. "They're more than just individuals," Agent Warren replied sharply as his eyes narrowed in seriousness. "They're organizations, governments, shadowy networks who will stop at nothing to exploit this power for their own agendas." Jacob gulped nervously, his thoughts whirling. He hadn't sought any of this. All he desired was to unravel a puzzle and demonstrate that he could achieve something beyond others' grasp. Yet here he stood, caught up in an overwhelming situation, far grander than he'd anticipated, on whose reign seemed elusive to him. The man in the blue coat rested a hand reassuringly on Jacob's shoulder. "You can control it, Jacob," he said earnestly, "but only if you comprehend its true nature. The code you broke, it is the origin, a roadmap to something beyond anyone's wildest imagination, perhaps even the future of our world. But it comes with its own peril, and you must decide if you're willing to embrace that risk." Jacob gazed at the blueprints spread across the table. They felt like either a treasure map or bait for disaster. This had transcended mere numbers. It was now about dominion, influence, and forces he couldn't hope to understand. "Are you prepared to shoulder this responsibility?" inquired the man. "Once you move forward, there's no turning back." With his heart pounding loudly in his chest, Jacob drew a deep breath. He surveyed the room, taking in the screens displaying intricate data, and the people who appeared to be waiting for his decision, a decision that could alter everything. This was never a role he sought out, but an undeniable instinct told him there was no turning back now. He had become entwined with something far greater than himself. "I am ready," he announced, his voice calm amid the tumult of emotions within. The man wearing a blue coat gave a nod, a subtle smile touching his lips. "Excellent. Let's begin." As they proceeded, Jacob felt the weight of the world resting heavily on his shoulders. He had no idea where this journey would take him or what challenges lay ahead, but one thing was clear. Everything in his life was about to change forever. With that realization, he stepped into a realm filled with secrets, power, and danger, whether he was ready or not.